Hello, welcome to A Woman's Swords, Indigeny Part 2. And this time I'm going to be speaking about connection. It's something we've really been discussing a lot this week. Our lecturer has been absolutely incredible. His name is Colin Campbell, and he has been trained and initiated in 4 different Botswanan traditions, so indigenous traditions, and he's given us a lot of food for thought about how we can bring these practices into our own lives. And it's just been the most incredible and enlightening week. So first of all, I'd like to discuss the ethics of that, because some people do say, you know, they're a bit nervous about applying indigenous traditions to our own lives, because they say, oh, but that's African, that doesn't belong to us. Colin's perception of that is that actually this knowledge is common to all humanity. Everybody can use it. It is not for one specific person, and most indigenous peoples have very similar views. It's just that they have different ways of expressing it. And so this stuff really is for all of us. Now, these 4 traditions that Colin has been discussing with us, these traditions actually don't exist in the traditional way anymore. Those communities have disbanded, and along with that, it was decided, the elders decided, that it was time to bring that knowledge into the world and to share it with a lot of people, because otherwise that knowledge would be lost. Colin himself grew up around the tribes, and he was about 6 years old when his father started working as an anthropologist, so he just grew up with learning all these things, being initiated into all these traditions. But he is a white man, his background is from Scotland, and so he is an excellent bridge between those 2 worlds, and he really shows how it's possible and how it can be done. So I found it extremely inspiring being around him and listening to him. And it's like listening to a storyteller. He is a wise elder. You could imagine sitting around a fire and listening to his stories for hours. He's that kind of speaker. So, yes, so we've been talking a lot about the connection between us and the land and the spirits of the land. One of the things we've been discussing is vigil, and this idea is basically an initiation, and usually it's actually young boys who do this, and when they return from vigil they are then welcomed back into the village as young men, as men. It's mostly the men who do this, because the women do a similar, smaller initiation, which Colin is not really able to speak about because he is a man, but it's a lot smaller because women generally have that connection anyway with nature and with the earth because of their cycles and their childbirth. So this is really something for young men to completely immerse themselves in the wilderness, and the point is that they go there to learn the songs of the creatures and the trees, and they just sit there. They sit and they listen, and they do nothing. They don't eat, and they are given these songs or poems by the other than human creatures that they come across. And so we have been invited to do vigil, and as part of that we go out just before sunrise on our own somewhere. We've been given a little ritual to do, and it's just a way of honouring the sunrise, honouring what's around us, and giving back to the land and listening to the land. I've not completed mine yet, but I may or may not share how it goes afterwards. But that's something we've been discussing a lot. One thing I have been part of this week is the steam ritual. There is a Native American version which you may have heard of called the Sweat Lodge, but this is the nomadic Botswanan tradition. It still involves putting hot stones on the fire and heating them up, placing them around, and then we as a group all stood around the stones in a circle, and we had a giant tarpaulin that we basically put over our heads and sat down on the ground on top of the tarpaulin, so it was like a giant dome going above our heads, completely sealed in. And then Colin is there and he splashes water on the hot stones, and so the whole space fills up with steam. In the water is medicinal plants, ground up plants with powder, and the whole point of it is to be medicine. And so as we're in as we're in there, breathing it in and seeping into our pores, and it's medicinal. At the same time, we are chanting. We have a beautiful chant, which has been something that I've really loved this week, is learning the different chants, because I feel the ancient Botswanan words really go deep. If any of you know the ancient Sanskrit, it's kind of the same feeling with that. They just have this deeper meaning because it's so ancient. And so when you're chanting that with the group, it's really a beautiful thing and really brings you into your body. After the steam ritual, Colin opened up a bit of the tarpaulin so he could get out, and then he was calling everybody out one by one. And this was the best part, because you have one person leave, and then you can hear this scream and everybody's looking around, and he says to you before, whatever happens, keep chanting. So we're all chanting, but also looking very nervously at each other, like, why is this person screaming outside? What are they doing? And then slowly it dawns on you, oh, they're getting water thrown on them. So one by one they're all going out, and we're hearing these screams, and it's getting closer and closer to your turn. But when it actually happens, it's the most beautiful feeling. It's very cleansing. And then you'll just go and sit around the fire. I did feel like it brought us together really as a group, but it wasn't just the steam ritual, it was everything around that. The building the fire, the laughing at each other, being splashed water, and then coming back around the fire afterwards as well. The whole lot of it really allowed us to share something that day, and I feel like that's part of why Indigenous traditions do these things, because it really does bring you together as a group. So I think a couple of things that we can learn from the things I've been discussing is, one, simply being in nature and immersing yourself, properly listening, going out and sitting and giving yourself time. And this is something we've talked a lot about as well, is just the slowness, and how in our society now it's very difficult to just stop and be, and time takes on a different meaning when you can just spend all day sitting. And the second thing is community, coming together with people and creating something, and especially with singing. If you do get a chance to find a singing group or something, this is what I'm really going to be focusing on a lot as well, just coming together with people, singing, chanting. I absolutely love it. It goes right to my belly. Finally, I just want to say a little word about spirituality, because there's an idea that Colin put to us that there is a difference between soul and spirit, And spirit is the part of us that wants to fly up, fly away, go to heaven, find God, be happy when we die, all those enlightenment ideas, whereas soul is the thing that connects us to each other, to nature, to the earth. It comes, I think, from singing and drumming, and it's a very African quality from what I can understand from this week. It's very much rooted in their traditions, and it's not to say that one is better than the other. He put it in a really nice way, actually. It's the parts of you that when you have a new relationship, one part of you just can't wait to dive in, make the connection, be part of something, belong to someone. And then there's this other part of you that's freaking out and saying, oh, this is too claustrophobic, I just want to get out and fly away. And I completely understand that. And it's soul and spirit. And I think in a lot of spirituality and religions now, we have this feeling like we can be on earth temporarily, and that we can, it focuses too much on the spirit aspect of it. So we can be here temporarily and then live our lives here and then go on to heaven, go on to a better place. Or the enlightenment idea of denying your body things, and then eventually you will become enlightened in that, which actually isn't what Buddha was preaching. He actually, I mean, when I speak about vigil, Buddha did a vigil. For 6 years he sat underneath the tree and he connected with it, and he connected with the land. It wasn't all about him getting out of his body and becoming enlightened in spirit, but not in body and soul. And we think of these things as separate, but actually they're all in one. And science does the same thing in some ways. Science, I believe, is a kind of religion, because it spouts things like it's truth, just like religions do, but it's not the whole truth. And for example, a lot of the popular science I'm seeing nowadays is all about space. It's all about getting out of the Earth into the atmosphere. Are we able to live on planet Mars? What are we going to do with the moon? And it's really a lot of money spent on that, whereas we could be focusing more about where we are right now, because actually we're never going to be able to live on Mars. Even if we did go there, it wouldn't be sustainable like Earth, because we as a species evolved on this planet and we can live here because we're in connection with everything. And so it's just ludicrous to think that we can go somewhere else. And so by cultivating that soul connection with the earth, we can find our own way of protecting our earth and loving the earth, and that can carry us forward. So yes, indigenous peoples do have a lot to teach us about that, and we shouldn't feel ashamed about taking those things on board in our own lives. So thank you so much for listening, and I shall hopefully do another video soon. Lots of love. Bye bye.